Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody. I'm Jason Buck, Business Development Director here at Lean Techniques. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We're glad you're here. If you don't know, Lean Bites are a short 16-minute talk where our experts are going to provide you with simple, practical tips and techniques that you can start applying with your team or organization today. So before we get started, if you have any questions throughout the talk, just feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll monitor that and try to get to them at the end if time allows, or we can offer more insight and email follow-up as well. Number two, at the end, do us a huge favor. There's going to be a survey that pops up automatically. If you could just fill that out with anything quick, that would be great, just for future Lean Bites, how things are going, anything like that, that would be fantastic. So without further ado, I'll introduce Alec Harrison. Alec is a generative AI mentor, a Microsoft MVP, and has a passion for making AI adoption easy. So today he's going to talk about going from Copilot to Co-Builder, unlocking 3x developer productivity with agentic systems. Take it away, Alex.
Thanks, Buck. I'm going to stick on the dad train. I'm Alec Harrison. This presentation, sorry about the blurry picture. My glasses were off when I made it and it looked clear. Now it is not. So that is credit to Buck putting this together, or at least talking about it beforehand. If you don't know me, I run the Azure user group in a few different cities. I'm a recent dad. I've used a group twice. That's how much it's on top of my mind. But Microsoft MVP and AI. So I think what we should talk about first is, Lean Techniques, Phoenix Project, Lean Manufacturing. We all kind of have a core competency of talking about theory of constraints. So if you think about when you build anything, there's going to be something that ultimately limits how fast you can move. If you're in this conversation, you either want to be a more productive dev, maybe you think developers are your limiting constraint. And what does that truly mean? It basically means that if you multiplied all of your throughputs through the system and watched each individual item flow through your factory, through your code, how you deliver projects, there's going to be some point that you hit where you see, okay, this is the piece that is truly slowing us down. In lean manufacturing, they talk about that is the constraint that you basically need to make sure is running 100% of the time, always up, because that is the true limiter of your system. Whether that's, maybe it's too expensive to get more of whatever that is. So in the case of developers, maybe we don't have the budget to hire more. If it is, constrained to a piece of machinery in a factory, maybe that piece of machinery is either super old, super expensive, not really feasible to get another one. So just making sure that that piece is running consistently, moving as fast as we can, holding up as little as possible into our system. With that, I think we can talk about a normal workflow. This is super generalized. So you may have pieces of this, you may not have other pieces of this, where you start with market research. Maybe you're wanting to add a new feature at your company. Maybe you're wanting to respond to customer feedback. Maybe you just want to keep up with a competitor. So you kind of come up with that signals and insights to say, hey, we think we should build something. That can also be, an executive decided, hey, we should do this because I think this is cool. There's a lot of different reasons why we do what we do, but essentially somebody somewhere says, hey, we should build this. That then typically will go to a product team or a product person that can then say, okay, we've got the high level specifications. How do I get this into workable chunks that a product team or developer can work on? So that includes coming from, the big high level picture to maybe more epic level, and then potentially start bringing it out into features that we can, actually chew on, consume, refine, and then start getting some time and estimates. That's where developers usually will start hopping in. Maybe they will at the product level too, of just high level gut checks, but they'll start working with refinement, start making estimates, seeing, hey, is this truly spilled out to the point that any developer can grab it and go? Then we do sprint planning. Every 2 weeks, we'll go and say, hey, here's how much work we think we can get done in this time over a long period of time, with your team velocity about how much people can do. So you get a rough idea of the estimate of what we can get done. Then we go to QA. Sometimes this is a developer or automated test suite that can then kick back to bug fix, but essentially they'll go and make sure the thing works as expected. If you have a company with a change review board, then you go to cab because you want to actually deploy it. And then assuming that that was filled out and approved, we can then deploy to production. And then we have this big iterative loop. Did the thing do the thing we wanted to do? Are we seeing shifts in the market? Are we gaining foothold? Are we losing foothold? Are people happy with what we did? That kind of thing. Um, Microsoft in 2025 released the Work Trend Index. And I think at that time, I would have told you that this is a pie in the sky, super crazy, kind of maybe eating your own dog food a little too much of where we thought we were going to get to as a frontier firm. So their hypothesis was basically, we're going to all be at phase one where a human and an assistant are working in tandem. So that would be basically think of your intelligent searches. So if you have, GitHub Copilot, or if you're searching in your different documents through your SharePoint connectors, you have like an assistant that can augment what you're trying to do. But at the end of the day, you're still the one like going to fetch a document. You're the one still making the code change. You're doing all of these things, but the assistant kind of helps you work faster. And I think we're seeing more and more proliferations with the agents going on, or the assistants going on to help people, and they're actually turning into agents. With that, the next phase is more of a huge human agent team. We're seeing that with like Claude Code and GitHub when you add extra connectors, add extra agents, add extra plugins, add extra skills. They can now do multi-turn operations. So basically, you can give them a complex task. They can tear it apart to smaller pieces, do the smaller pieces, and then kick back to you. Or if you have workflows designed in such a way, potentially even go and open up a pull request and get them to the point that, hey, you're able to complete work. You'll be kind of digital colleagues. You can, kind of give them a rough direction and they will go and run with it. And you can then be the higher level, more manager. Then the final phase, which I thought was super crazy, was the human-led agent-operated teams. So you set directives and directions and execute business processes and workflows, and you check in as needed. This is like if you've ever done a long-running task in like Copilot in YOLO mode, or in your Claude code, your dangerous, I forget the exact ending, but it's dangerous, letting it just go and execute and chunk away at big tasks. From a business standpoint, hey, here is the high level thing I want to accomplish. Go do what you need to do. And it can then talk to multiple skills, potentially talk to different agents you have, different CLIs, all of those sort of fun things so that you can go and, do what you need to do your job. I'm going to ask a quick poll here. Who uses Scrum today? No, whether it's 1 week, 2 weeks. Let's see, at least 2 reactions. So this is kind of how I think the future of agents is looking or working out. There's a few companies I've talked to that have seen, upwards of, they claim 3 times multiples on developer productivity. That's where the title of this talk came from. But I think if you think about it, even if we get just a 50% developer productivity increase, if your organization has 100 people, it's like you got 50 more developers overnight and you're paying for, GitHub Copilot, you're paying for Claude Code. That is multiples levels cheaper than another developer, especially if you're talking 50% increases. So how does this apply to what we're doing? I would say this is kind of what I've seen started to work out. You still have your Scrum Agile, ceremonies where you'll refine your backlog into user stories. But then you can actually go and do your planning and commitments. Once you have the capacity kind of picked out, you can then trigger agents to go and develop all the work on your behalf. So you can actually use Git workflows, work trees, sorry, to go and do a bunch of your basically backlog items together in tandem. So let's assume you do sprint planning at the end of the day. I'm going to say, cool, we committed to it. I have all these tasks assigned to me. I can go and kick off an agent for each backlog item and say, okay, I'm going to go and dispatch all of my tasks. So basically my entire sprint can be done by the time I get back to work on the next day. Uh, these are just some example agents. They might not be this granular. They might be, one agent that does multiple tasks. It kind of just depends on how you build your orchestration layer. But this is just an example of we can scaffold the code, generate tasks, review the code, and then doc and make sure the documentation there and they're specified. And then merge the outputs to the point of we get a GitHub pull request that has the code there. I've heard of, seeing people get to the point of, 80% production level code just by doing this. So if you think about, hey, if we just got all of our backlog items in the first day of the sprint, they're 80% complete already. You can see kind of where the dev productivity picks up. And AI agents really compound on as you document more and more of your system too. So as you do more and more and document more and more, that productivity gain, it starts to become a flywheel. And then once you review it, you can then merge it, have QA test and validate it, and then deploy and release. This could be, a QA department automation test. Hopefully you have your agents writing automation tests and you can make sure that those are all good. And so how do we do this safely and cheaply? I think you can establish some best practices from a platform team level, whether that's an AI repository of prompts, skills, if you decide to establish a full like LLM memory, like simple mem, we can do all that for best practices, what each repository is supposed to do, what tools or what CLIs are or are not allowed. And that's where organizational governance comes into play. What can the agents do on our behalf? Do we completely block certain things? How do we enable teams so that they don't have to think about that? Or potentially get a lot of our best practices for free. Let's not have everybody in the organization write their, skills.md file. Let's try to share it amongst everybody and truly get that organizational benefit. I'm going to give this next line to Sauber. Scott Sauber gave a talk internally about CLI over MCP. I think a lot of people are shifting more towards CLI actions because it's more deterministic. There's a lot of code and token usage that if you have a MCP or model context protocol, you spend tokens to first discover what tools are available versus a CLI. Your agent's already trained on the internet, what most of the CLIs we use every day. For example, like GitHub has its own CLI. Why go and discover some tool that is not deterministic when you truly want deterministic behavior? So if you give it access to CLI, it can kind of impersonate you as a user and do the actions on your behalf. And then the final piece, ownership of code. At the very end of the day, before you merge something in or truly want to get it to a pull request state, I believe that you are the person who still owns the code. It doesn't matter what agent wrote it. It doesn't matter whatever, because when production goes down, nobody's going to call Anthropic or GitHub because their agent committed code that you didn't like. There was just a recent post on Twitter where somebody's agent deleted their entire production database and they tried to blame it on Copilot or Cursor and Cursor's agent, and they just got roasted on the internet because everybody's like, why does your agent have production level delete access? That's something that you should, in the same way a junior developer shouldn't be able to delete production, your agent should not be able to as well. So at the end of the day, you need to own what your agents are doing. It should be a good way to increase, raise all tides so that your even worse developers get the benefits of this because they can, be more productive, get the code out, help with more of the boilerplate. And even your more extreme developers will figure out how to configure this to work more like them. And everybody all around the org should be more productive, hopefully decrease the cost of building software. So then there's more software, more problems we can actually afford to solve. And then maybe the constraint can move a little bit off of the developers as a primary focus to other parts of the organization. So we can see how do we get work done quicker? How do we be more effective? And then hopefully, build more cooler software because of it. The elephant in the room, a lot of us have heard cost as being a huge factor. Anthropic talked about raising costs. GitHub Copilot is raising or changing their cost scheme. This is something I built. I tell people in my offline or local AI talk that the reason I think AI agents aren't going away, especially coding assistant agents, is because there's a lot of tools like Ollama, AI Foundry Local. This is a tool I built. It's fun. It was fun to deploy a VS extension, but Basically, it just uses on-prem, on-machine models to do your coding assistant tasks. So I think even if Anthropic 10,000x their subscription or made it to some point that it's not feasible to pay for every developer, there are still AI models that we can use on a device level that could get to the point that we can still see these productivity gains. We should still be looking into this. And until they do that, we have this exit path for a safety standpoint. We're not going to be completely in trouble if they decide to raise the cost. We still have an exit strategy from a disaster perspective. And this is just my fun toy example because I used to tell people it was so easy to do. So I put my money where my mouth was and actually built it, which wasn't horrendously difficult when you just vibe coded or agentic engineered. But yeah, that's at a very high level. Kind of, I think where we're going to be moving towards more for development is truly augmenting developers with some more AI agents that can free developers up to do the more fun and complicated tasks that we are doing and do maybe a little less of the minutia of making sure that, the React template is in the right structured or format or, what have you. But yeah.
Alec, thank you very much. It's interesting how the times are changing, and AI looks to be like the next agile transformation with a lot of this stuff. So that's fantastic. With that, thank you all for attending. Happy Cinco de Mayo once again. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.